many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. We will be getting into Russia, China, and something I've been warning about for a while, and that is collapsing, excuse me, the U.S. dollar and going to a different currency for the petrodollar. And one important thing to cover is what happens if and when, which I think it's not if, it eventually will. But what happens if or when the dollar collapses? I tend to look at it as we've seen a Great Depression. We've seen a depression, not in the way that the Great Depression happened, but it was a depression, a recession, whatever you want to call it. We didn't have the gigantic dust bowl that covered the Great Plains, so we didn't suffer off, as bad, but we are still dealing with ramifications from that. And I think we can really see it in society, and the average person out there that might do manual labor knows that it's not all good in the neighborhood. So we have to understand the ramifications that will come if the dollar collapses, if and when. And I believe, again, it's more a matter of when, not if. But we'll cover that real quick with the clip from AMTV, and then we'll kind of get into Russia and China, and then I do want to get on to some other topics too. So let me go ahead and cue this up here.
We also updated guidance indicating that an increase in the target range for the federal funds rate remains unlikely at our next meeting in April. With continued improvement in economic conditions, however, we do not want to rule out the possibility that an increase in the target range could be warranted at subsequent meetings. Let me emphasize, however, that the timing of the initial increase in the target range will depend on the committee's assessment of incoming information. Today's modification of our guidance increase. In other words, just because we remove the word patient from the statement doesn't mean we're going to be impatient. Moreover, even after the initial increase in the target funds rate, our policy is likely to remain highly accommodative to support continued progress toward our objectives of maximum employment and 2% inflation.
Before we get started, please check out our sponsor, Lear Capital. That's Lear Capital, the precious metals leader. Buy gold, buy silver, do it today. Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. It's raining outside right now. I don't know if you can hear the pitter-pattering of raindrops. Maybe it's tears. Maybe it's America watering its eyes. You know, I watched the Federal Reserve Chairwoman speak yesterday all day. I watched her play words, play off words, suggest that they're going to remove the word patient, but they're still not going to be impatient. But maybe they're patient, maybe they're not. They're never going to raise interest rates. They're going to raise interest rates. I even watched supporters of the Fed, you know, people like Steve Leisman of CNBC, honestly just look totally and utterly confused. I mean, people that honestly think that the Federal Reserve is going to act after 7 or 8 years of these shenanigans post the 2008-2009 financial collapse, only to realize after almost 8 years that they're not going to do shit. They're not going to do a single gosh darn thing regarding interest rates. I mean, we're talking about raising interest rates from 0 by 25 basis points, still keeping it under 1%. So basically, we're going from 0 to close to 0, and they're still not going to raise rates. Janet Yellen's been saying for years now that it's going to be data dependent. As soon as the data supports an interest rate hike, she'll be hawkish and not dovish. Yet the unemployment rate, which is allegedly at 5.5%, isn't good enough for Janet Whore Yellen to hike rates. Well, then how good does it have to be? Because I don't know if it can get any better. Of course, we know that's not the real number. We know that's not the shadow stats. It's not the U6, which is still the real unemployment rate, which is still above 10%. But I can't help but look at all of this and honestly feel like I'm looking from the outside in at an insane asylum. I watched the U.S. stock market juice itself on steroids yesterday. The U.S. dollar, which has moved parabolically recently and has been strengthening, collapsed. Oil prices skyrocketed. Stocks skyrocketed. Bonds skyrocketed. Gold surged. Oil surged. And I can't help but sit back like I'm looking in one of those Christmas snow things from the outside in, looking into that petri dish and honestly seeing an insane asylum in America today. You know, I watched some commentary from Peter Schiff yesterday, who I agree with. I agree with his analysis. He's been dead right. He was dead right in 2008 and 2009, pre that collapse, and he's dead right now. But what Peter Schiff doesn't see is how this collapse ultimately unfolds. It's not going to be as simple as just QE4, you know, quantitative easing 4, which I would agree. They're going to launch some kind of form of quantitative easing 4. They'll probably launch some kind of form of quantitative easing 5, but it's going to be even bigger than that. People, for some reason, can't see it. It's going to be an entirely new paradigm. Let me explain. Whatever catalyst it is, it could be the U.S. dollar collapse. It could be a systemic shock to the U.S. stock market. This year, let's say, for example, where the Dow Jones Industrial Average is cut in half. There's a drop worse than what we saw in 08 and 09, worse than the Great Depression. They're not going to simply just launch QE4 as a result. They're not going to cut rates from 0 to negative where they already are, because again, there's no more ammunition left. There's not a single bullet left in that gun. There's nothing that the Federal Reserve can do. So when that event happens, when the unthinkable actually happens, when the dollar collapses, when there's the crash, they'll simply change the game. It'll be a brand new system. It'll be an entirely new paradigm. They'll say, hey, you know, America, things are really bad now. You know that dollar that you used to, transact with in your pocket? We're going to move to a new international basket of currency now. It's called the XYZ basket. Isn't that great? It could be a combination of currencies abroad. It could be the US dollar and the euro together, along with the renminbi, along with the Swiss franc, along with something else. It could be a digital format. They're just going to change the game entirely. It'll be a brand new system. And yes, people will lose money. Companies will go out of business. Americans will lose their life savings, just like already happened with the wealth transfer in 2008 and 2009. But they're just going to change the game. It'll be a brand new system. The question on everyone's mind won't be then, when will they raise interest rates? Because the answer to that question is they never are. They'll never raise interest rates. They're never going to normalize interest rates at all. They're never going to normalize the system again because they can't. I mean, look at Greece. Greece is an example. It's a test sample for what's happening here in the United States of America. Ultimately, Greece is going to leave the Eurozone. They are either going to re-drachmatize or they're going to do something entirely and completely different. It's exactly what the United States is going to do, and that will be the solution. It'll be a brand new system. It'll be a brand new paradigm. It's not going to be as simple or as easy as what we've seen in the past. That's what's happening. And you see, Americans don't realize any of this. I mean, if you're not wowed and in total and utter and complete shock yesterday watching the games that the Federal Reserve is playing, then you're not paying attention. You're honestly just dumb. Really, you're dumb. If you're not shocked by the word games that are being played at the Federal Reserve almost 8 years post the 2008 and 09 collapse, with new bubbles, with a stock market that has tripled, with a bond market where we've seen interest rates on the 10-year go from 1.6 roughly, a low that we saw here recently, and then over 60 days above 2%. I mean, the lack of liquidity in the market is enormous. The price declines that we're going to see in the not too distant future are enormous. And if you're not in shock by the games being played, then you're honestly dumb, blind, or you're an idiot. One of those three, and none of those are a good thing. You see, Americans don't understand that everything has been lost. America has been raped. The system itself, the financial system, is over. It's just like the Constitution. The Constitution in the United States has been revoked. The sheer fact that the NSA can wiretap every conversation that all of us have, anti-constitutionally and illegally, proves that the Constitution has been revoked. Everything has changed. The Manchurian candidate that is and has made up Barack Obama and his administration has won. We no longer have the America we once had. It isn't America any longer. The new America is the America when you go to Starbucks and try to get a black coffee, they're going to engage with you about race. They're going to write race together on your cup and ask you about what you think about race relations. That's the new America. They might as well write Islam on the cup and tell me about the Prophet Muhammad, or write Jesus on the cup. When did these social elitists, these CEOs at companies like Starbucks, think and come up with the idea that they have the right to somehow merge their social consciousness with their businesses? Isn't there supposed to be a separation of church and state, with government and the school system? Corporations, I guess, can do whatever they want. But I agree with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he says likely there's going to be violence as a result of this. In fact, I think if a barista that makes $10 an hour wants to engage you on race and writes race together on your cup, you should give them a Black Panther pamphlet or a KKK pamphlet and engage them on that. We live in an insane asylum. This petri dish that is no longer America. This financial system that's no longer a system. Yet nothing changes. It seems that people aren't shocked by what's happening, aren't angry. And it only proves my point. It only makes me incredibly and deeply saddened, ashamed of this country, ashamed of its people. It's over. It's leading to war. What do you think?
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. I'm not going to play the rest of that. But again, that's AMTV, Alternative Media TV. When we look at what's going on, again, you know, the whole war thing, we're basically we're at a war, and right now it's two fronts. We're playing a world financial war, the West versus the East and Russia, and even parts of South America, and we'll get into that a little bit further. And we're also dealing with the extremist, Islamic extremists and terrorists and people over in the Middle East, which is growing, and they are following leaders that do want to bring the war to us. And a lot of these people are manipulated, or they're just really angry and fed up with the constant war that we're engaged in over there, which only helps those extremists recruit. When people are finally fed up, they'll do anything at that point. We're dealing with all this. And the financial thing will hit us hard because of how far we're in debt. The amount of debt that we've occurred, the only reason that we're even able to occur that is because of the petrodollar. And not only will we not be able to incur more debt from other countries without it, the petrodollar, our debt's going to be called up. So if you understand the extremes that can lead to, you understand why maybe the system is engaged in this financial Cold War with Russia and China, and in a way a physical war too with Russia to a point when you bring Ukraine into it. And it's the Western, it's not just the United States. Europe understands the crucial thing that this could do. I believe you'd see extremely high oil prices. America, I think, would fare off better than Europe for the simple fact we can get oil. But there's going to be a breaking point because of if we lose the petrodollar and the ability for it to be financially sustainable, to be able to even frack or anything here in the United States because of the debt being called upon it, which could result in foreign countries pumping the oil out of the ground. Because, well, the people that are operating the system right now, the ones that are getting their strings pulled, will keep selling out to maintain their way of life while the country degrades. Without the petrodollar, you're going to see many people flee America, and I think that's why you've seen the rise in number of people renouncing their American citizenship. it becomes one of those things where um, I think more and more people at the very top are realizing the threat to their immense wealth is not going to be sustained for too much longer. It will start bleeding people, and it's going to probably reach a point where they're not going to be able to save it at all. Their wealth will be taken from them. And that's what the big deal is. And I'm not saying that our financial system is okay. I'm not saying our financial system shouldn't be, shut down the way it is and operates right now. But this is a different type of threat, and I'm not saying that we should be the petrodollar. It really has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that we have to realize how the system has been set up, how it's been played, and what to expect and prepare for. And I think that we're in a stalemate in a way. I have one article. Let me find it here. This one out of sovereignman.com. I'm not too familiar with this, but I've seen it from multiple ones. It's happening. More U.S. allies join the anti-dollar alliance. The United States government just went from "please baby don't leave me" to frustrated threats and whining after the UK announced it will join new China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as a founding member. Late last week, Germany, France, and Italy decided yesterday to follow Britain's lead and join as well. And like I said, Europe would not fare too well if they keep operating on the petrodollar, and we eventually would end up in the same boat. And this is not going to fare out for them in a great way either. What it will do is ensure that they're not going to be third world. They're not going to be at the top of the food chain, but they're still going to be able to enjoy some type of comfort to a point. But it says here, welcome to the beginning of the end of the U.S. dollar's domination. It's happening. For the past few decades, America was the undisputed global economic and political superpower. The entire world happily used the U.S. dollar and hence the U.S. banking system. More importantly, the world happily placed its trust in the U.S. government, but there's a limit to how irresponsible, reckless, and threatening you can be. Eventually, such behavior catches up to you. That time has now come. The U.S. government is now drowning in debt and can never be repaid. The U.S. government's own numbers, in fact, estimate its level of insolvency at roughly $60 trillion. This means that when you add up all the assets of the United States, every acre of land, every tank, every drone, every drop of oil in the strategic reserve, and subtract all the debt and liabilities, the result is minus $60 trillion. That is the net worth of the United States government. On top of that, the U.S. government has chosen to use its once trusted currency and banking system as weapons to blackmail the rest of the world. In fact, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act is probably the best recent example. FATCA's provisions require every single bank in the world to jump into bed with the Internal Revenue Service and agree to all sorts of expense debilitating information sharing agreements. And any bank which dares to defy the U.S. government gets effectively blackballed from the U.S. banking system and subject to a 30% withholding tax. On top of that, the U.S. government has taken to slamming foreign banks with the most astonishing fines. $9 billion, for example, in the case of French bank BNP Paribas. BNP's wrongdoing was conducting business with countries like Cuba and Iran that the U.S. government doesn't like. Bear in mind, BNP is a French bank and broke no French law whatsoever. Moreover, the business was done through its Swiss subsidiary, and they broke no Swiss law either. That didn't matter to Uncle Sam, which fined the bank $9 billion under threat of being kicked out of the U.S. banking system. Blackmail, extortion, intimidation, this isn't the behavior of a trusted friend, it's the behavior of an arrogant psychopath or sociopath. And the rest of the world is sick of it. Other countries, even allied nations, see the times are changing. There are new players on the rise, and the U.S. isn't the only option anymore. And I'm not going to read the rest of this article. You can find it at sovereignman.com. And I think that this is going to continue to grow, and the tensions are going to continue to grow. And let me try to find something real quick. I wonder if hopefully I can find it here. Give me a second, guys. Okay. I have it from multiple sources. Let me find a decent source here. Decent, I don't know what you would consider decent. I'll just read one from CNN. I think everybody here is smart enough to take CNN for what it is, but it says here, out of CNN.com, NATO intercepts Russian military aircraft. NATO jets scrambled to intercept Russian military aircraft as they neared Latvian airspace, officials said on Wednesday. Estonian radar detected the aircraft over the Baltic Sea on Tuesday. Night, NATO said, other than the lead aircraft, NATO said none of the other Russian military aircraft was on a flight plan. NATO sent jets to identify the planes and later reported that the military aircraft flew on into Russian airspace. NATO didn't say how many Russian aircraft were involved. The flights come as Russia's northern fleet has been placed on full combat alert for military exercises involving nearly 40,000 troops and 50 warships. And I had another article. I think I might have accidentally closed that one. But that number has been upped. I know it's at 80,000 troops now. I think even more warships, more aircraft, tanks, and basically they're running a full exercise now. But it says here the exercise have rattled nerves in nearby NATO states, including Latvia, where U.S. troops and equipment recently arrived for NATO training, and where fears are growing about Russian President Vladimir Putin's next move. At the same time, on Wednesday, Putin joined a celebration in Moscow's Red Square, where Russians celebrated the one-year anniversary of the annexation of Crimea. NATO has condemned the annexation as an illegal territory grab and is boosting its troops presence in the region in what officials say is an effort to discourage Putin from encroaching into other countries. Putin describes the annexation as a reunification, saying that Crimea's residents overwhelmingly voted to be part of Russia. Again, that's CNN.com, but what I think is happening is they're trying to reestablish a empire. And like I said, this is a world war, financial, and escalating. It's escalating. And I don't know whether it's going to be the economy that they crash first or start a actual physical war or both at the same time, or which one will follow. But it's escalating. This is going on right now, and most people are, I think, very unaware of it. Very kind of accepting of just, things are just what they are, and nothing big will happen. I think that we are kind of fooling ourselves if we truly think that. Okay. I had a clip here I wanted to get to. Hopefully I can find it again. I'm going to have to search for it. But before I go on to that, kind of to stay on topic to a point, there is one thing I did want to cover when it comes to foreign policy. Best discussion you'll ever hear about reality of Iraq on 20-year anniversary. And this was brought to us by Ben Swan and RT, benswan.com. Check them out. Great articles over there at Ben Swan. Real journalism. But let me go ahead and cue this up here.
The start of that war, clearly the Middle East is much worse off than it was in February of 2003. What does it mean for us today, and how do we move forward as a nation? Joining me now to discuss is Daniel McAdams. He is the Executive Vice Director with the Ron Paul Institute. And Dan, thanks for being here. So,
good to be with you.
Right now, the Obama administration is pushing for this AUMF, this authorization for use of military force to combat ISIS. We have troops already on the ground in Iraq. We have not left Afghanistan, and we are in constant modes of adding more U.S. military into virtually every country in North Africa and the Middle East. What say you about where we are today?
Well, it was interesting, the clip that you ran of Obama, I think it was from yesterday, where he rightly blamed the rise of extremism, the rise of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, connecting it directly to the U.S. Invasion and U.S. intervention in Iraq. But what is his solution? It's so hilarious. His solution is more of the same. So the solution to the problem created by our invasion is for him to get a new authorization for the use of force to increase U.S. military presence in the region. It makes no sense. They never question the policy. The answer is always do more.
Aim before we shoot, he said, and yet this president, this administration is not aiming before they shoot. They're certainly not aiming in Syria right now. They're not aiming in Yemen. We're watching this exact same policy, as you point out, repeated over and over and over across the Middle East and North Africa. And as you mentioned, the president, one thing he did not bring up was simply the fact that much of how ISIS is armed and funded was because of military equipment that we left behind in those countries, was it not?
Absolutely. It started in Iraq. You know, if you remember, in the summer, when the Iraqi army sort of turned and ran after how many hundreds of millions of dollars in U.S. training, they left all this American-provided equipment behind. And, you know, all this equipment is a huge boondoggle to the military-industrial complex. You know, the entire Washington area is made up of people who get enormously wealthy selling these guns and marketing these guns and other things to the rest of the world, where it wreaks nothing but destruction. And so now you have this problem of them being incredibly well armed, not only from what they've taken in Iraq, but from other parts of the region.
Speaking of ISIS, U.S. military forces say that they have bombed an Islamic State drone aircraft that was being used for battlefield surveillance in Iraq. This was not an armed drone, but it is raising questions about whether or not ISIS will soon have armed drones. Is this just another example of how the U.S., especially now that we're considering providing drones to quote-unquote allies in the Middle East, is this just the next step in this battle against these insurgent groups?
Well, of course they'll get more weapons, more sophisticated weapons. You know, the stuff they've captured so far isn't hardly junk, and these people have shown themselves to be incredibly adept at making money. And these seem like the greatest capitalists in the region. They're selling oil, they're selling heroin, they're selling everything. They're making tons of money. It's almost like it's almost hard to believe the next story you hear about ISIS. But yes, if they have these drones now, maybe they got them from Amazon.com, who knows? But I think it does suggest that they'll get more and more sophisticated equipment. And what they want is the U.S. to engage them, and the U.S. is playing their game. You know, it's no secret. Osama bin Laden said it, you know, many years ago. He wants to draw us into the region, draw the U.S. into the region, and make good targets and be great recruiting for these causes. And so far, it's worked really well.
So far, it has worked well. And as far as the providing of weapons, that seems to have worked well. Also, $580 million worth of military equipment is what the U.S. military left behind in Iraq. We left it with the Iraqi military, who was not trained well, clearly, because they turned and ran as soon as ISIS crossed the border into Iraq. But I also want to talk to you about a more recent example of that, because the Pentagon just admitted that they have lost track of over $500 million in military assistance that the U.S. has given to Yemen's failed government, including lost equipment, M16s, M4 rifles, over 1 million rounds of ammo, Glock pistols, night vision goggles, drones, helicopter surveillance, aircraft, and patrol boats. This is stuff that we gave to the government of Yemen, which immediately turned, and again because of the policies of the United States with our constant drone strikes in Yemen. President says aim before you shoot, but again, it seems like there's a very short-sighted policy here.
You're right. You absolutely nailed it, because all of this started with this great myth called Arab Spring. You know, this wonderful rising of democracy in the Middle East and North Africa, which is a total farce. Much of it was engineered by Washington in the first place. And, you know, Yemen was part of it. There was the overthrow of Saleh's government back in 2011. You know, you had a new, more obsequious government in place that said, okay, go ahead and drone everything in sight. The U.S. went for it and droned everything. And what do you think? It made the population rather irritated to be blown up, you know, for a number of years. So at the first possible opportunity, the Shia minority, under the guise of the Houthis, took over and deposed to the new government. So it should be hardly a surprise. But you know what is also not a surprise is that the neocons, when faced with the failure of their interventionist policies, once again, their solution is, we've got to go in and solve this problem with more intervention. The problem of us leaving too many of these weapons over there, leaving these weapons over here, is never, hey, let's not leave weapons in places like that. It's, hey, we got to go in there and do some more.
And of course, the excuse given for why the weapons were left behind is it's too expensive to bring them back. It would cost us $1 billion to bring back $500 million worth of weapons. It would cost a lot less just to bomb those weapons instead of leaving them. But I want to touch quickly on what you just said about the farce of the Arab Spring. Tunisia was where the Arab Spring supposedly began, and just, what was it, yesterday that we saw, you know, these extremists kill people there. And we're watching this all throughout the Middle East. Even when it was started by, you know, a few folks who were looking for some form of democracy, and immediately that's overtaken, and not by just extremists, but as you were pointing out, even by the CIA and even by government organizations that are engineering this in order to overthrow governments.
Sure, and the State Department started training these liberal Egyptian youth many years before the Arab Spring in 2011. And as you point out, very quickly it's taken over. It's off topic, but the same thing happened in Ukraine. The U.S. trained, some liberal kids to protest. Next thing you know, you have these radical Pravi sector right-wing types shooting into the crowd and causing an overthrow. So this is how it works. You have to ask yourself, are they that incredibly stupid? Meaning the U.S. interventionists and planners, are they that stupid, or are they evil? Is this what they want to happen? Is it as Pepe Escobar famously says, is this the empire of chaos? I really don't know the answer to it, but it certainly is chaotic.
Well, whether evil or stupid, it seems to be the same result in the end. Last question I have for you, and it's got to be quick here, but according to the Wounded Warrior Project, 50,000 U.S. troops have been seriously injured or wounded since 2001. Over almost 4,500 U.S. troops killed in Iraq. We also have the highest rate of active duty suicide in history. How do we deal with that reality?
Well, again, it's a difficult topic because the easiest way to do it is to not go into wars that are not directly defensive wars for our own national security, defending our borders. Unfortunately, these guys, a lot of them are suffering the psychological trauma of knowing that they participated in a war that was based on lies. And you can imagine how that would feel, how that would harm you psychologically. And then they get home and they're messed up because of this. And what does the Veterans Administration do? They pump them full of drugs, every kind of drug you can imagine. It makes things just that much worse. And they fall off into suicide. So the long-term solution is to simply stop intervening in these places that are not, direct defensive wars for the United States. But guess what? They're not going to listen in Washington because there's too much money in war.
And at the end of the day, even if we stop as of today, the long-term effects of the Iraq War, Afghanistan, and what we're doing right now are going to be felt for decades. Daniel McAdams, Executive Director with the Ron Paul Institute. Thanks so much.
And, you look at it in another way. You can look at it too that, it seems that they always want there to be chaos and war other places to keep you distracted. And, it causes sometimes us to forget about what's going on here. Because we have to deal with this, because when they are stirring up stuff in other countries, when they are threatening or provoking or, maybe trying to defend us, I believe most troops out there ignorantly think that they are fighting for freedom. They don't realize that if they were fighting for freedom, they'd be here protecting their rights. When you look at things that go on here, it's pretty amazing. I have one here from guns.com. Government watches the rise of well-armed militias. We know that they watch militias. I don't think that's new to anyone. But it says here, HBO's new documentary series Vice on Thursday released several promotional video clips highlighting the rise of America's militias. The third episode of the season, airing Friday night, includes interviews with the 3% United Patriots, a well-armed, reportedly well-trained group with chapters across the United States. As faith in the government continues to erode, people are starting to want to go back to the real intention of the Constitution. 3% co-founder Mike Morris told Vice during the October taping of the show. The original intent of the Second Amendment was that the American citizen would be as armed and as prepared as the government itself. Militia groups are on the government's radar and considered by officials to be breeding grounds for right-wing extremism and domestic terrorism. But it's not just the Obama administration that has been keeping tabs on the groups. A report written by the Department of Homeland Security underneath the Bush administration and not published until Obama's first term, when then Homeland Security Janet Napolitano took office and subsequently criticized the agency for the report, outlined concerns that right-wing militia groups were possibly recruiting veterans, CNN reported. And this is also when we found out that, they want to attack returning veterans so they can't have guns. Kind of interesting. There's always been a lot of fear with the Obama administration, Morris told Vice. He's already proven that he's willing to do whatever he has to do to go after the Second Amendment, but with a well-armed population that makes being a tyrannical government dangerous. Independent of the Vice interview, Morris, a former U.S. Marine, has since been fired from his high-level communications job in Denver, Colorado, because of his affiliation with the United Patriots, he said. He asked Guns.com to not reveal the name of the company because his attorney thought it might jeopardize the outcome of the employment dispute. Morris believes it's the company's affiliation with the Obama administration that created a bias against him during the company's investigation, which was launched shortly after Morris fired an employee he managed. Morris said the employee happened to be a member of the same militia and forwarded some of the group's emails to another supervisor with the intention of harming Morris's career. In the end, Morris said the company claimed it fired him because he lied about using his company's signature in militia group emails. Morris claims it was the employee he fired who pasted the company's signature into the group emails. And he probably has emails to prove that, if it's true. The company declined to comment and would not confirm anything regarding the dispute, nor would it confirm that Morris had worked there. Whether or not Morris was fired for his affiliation with the Patriots group, like he claims, the fact remains that the company does have ties to the Obama administration. One of its executives helped to raise a substantial amount of money for the president and was given a position in the White House. According to media reports, the company in question was also given a number of government contracts, which the executive claimed to have not known about. Morris's United Patriots is about 30,000 strong, he said, and part of a greater network of 3%ers and oath keepers that outnumber the hundreds of thousands. That number in the hundreds of thousands. The groups don camouflage and tactical gear and train like they are preparing for battle. It's sometimes hard to tell many of them from U.S. military personnel, likely because close to 50% of them are veterans, Moore said. The group is well organized on social media. It has logos embroidered on tactical Velcro patches and hand signals to signify allegiance. The pinky finger, ring finger, and middle fingers are extended to show a 3 or 3%, a number associated with the percent of colonists willing to fight against the British Crown during the American Revolution. When asked by Vice reporter that what Morris was training for, he initially dodged the question outright, claiming that you're honing your weapons skills to fight the government in self-defense is risky business. We train for the day we hope never comes, Morris said diplomatically. That article came from guns.com. Again, that show is on Vice. You probably find more information at Vice about that one. But, militia's been around for a long time. And, you could go back to a lot of old shows and old, police shows. Not real old, but old for our standards. The youth nowadays would know a lot of these shows. But they used to always try to like portray the militia groups as domestic terrorists. I remember that from when I was younger. But never happened that way. They didn't go on all these crazy missions to target the government. And really, they're the ones that have stayed true to what they claim to be for, and that's to defend citizens and people against a tyrannical government. Because the only time they've ever engaged at all would, things like the Bundy Ranch, where they showed the same amount of force and people, they were pointing their guns. And I think that is bad. But so were the feds. And the feds were pointing them at protesters. And that's that hypocrisy that we have in society anymore, where we look at society and what we see is a certain level of rights for the average day citizen, and then government, police, and all that have more rights, which is a fallacy, really. It's an illusion that people allow themselves to have, because there is no such thing as having an extra set of rights. There are rights. Only individuals can have rights. Each individual has a right to, free speech and all this. And yes, when every individual comes together and exercises each one of their individuals, okay, a group can exercise freedom of speech. They can exercise their Second Amendment too. But government as a organization, extra rights, you can't have that, because individuals can't have extra rights. You can't go, well, they're a part of the government, therefore they can't. No, the government doesn't have rights, because all it is an organization of people. If those individuals can't have those rights, then those individuals can't cooperate in a group exercising rights they don't have. And, that goes into the state. And it's something I did want to share. What time is it? Okay, right before I share that, we got enough time I can share. It's a little bit lengthy clip. And it's Jeffrey Tucker. And let me hurry up and find it here. And it's, what is the state and what does it do? And I want to play this and go over it afterwards, and I'll kind of open. I think I'll open up the phone lines as long as we got enough time, and really get into this, because we really need to understand and start operating where we live free. We don't ask permission, and we stand up for those that their rights are being abridged. And it's changing the culture of all the cultures. And it's saying that you can practice your culture. You can have those ideologies, those beliefs, and live your life as you choose without harming others. But there's a point that we have to stand up for those that are being picked on. And I want to take a moment to tell you guys, check out the UCY store. UCY is partnered with Amazon, and they've created a pretty awesome store for prepping and camping and radiation gear. If you go to ucy.tv, click the UCY store tab, and check them out. And when you do that and you buy, you're getting the same great deals from Amazon, and UCY gets a little kickback to help cover operating costs. And most people buy a lot from Amazon, so this is a way you can get the same great deals and buying all the same great merchandise. And check out UCY's collection of prepping gear, and it helps out alternative media like UCY. So check them out, and I'm going to go ahead and play this. What is the state, and what does it do for you? This was Jeffrey Tucker. Now, this was put out about 2 years ago. This was a speech he did, but I definitely want to cover this. Okay, I'm going to stop that right there. You can get the rest of that. Liberty AUS for Australia, of course. Liberty AUS on YouTube has all of Jeffrey Tucker's speech. And again, this was back 2 years ago in 2013. It was in Australia, Misa's seminar, 2013. But it's like 4 hours or so, maybe, or maybe only 3. But there's quite a bit of speech there, and that's not all of that one. But one thing I want to touch on about this, and the nation state, and I think technology, in one hand, has freed parts of us, but in our hand, it's kind of brought back a nation state to a point, or at least they've been able to manipulate society to keep their balance. And I still think it's breaking down. You might be right about the after the nuclear bomb was. It's one of those things, though, that the nation state still exists, and to look at it as a fallacy, as a idea. It exists because if you take one person out, the whole operation doesn't quit. And when you look at it, it's a fallacy because it's really an idea that people just go along with. It's not a actual existing being that can, it's a system that's set up, and we don't look at it that way. Definitely people that are that still believe in it. They see the system and they see it as a existing thing that is controllable. They treat it like it's a machine that you can control. They don't understand it's not a machine that you control. It's not a physical object. It's an idea. It's a system that you might go along with, but you don't understand the system set up that it doesn't matter whether you go along with it or not, that it will continue to exist. And we see that when we do have the protests. Even if you look at the Vietnam protests, Vietnam still happened. They still accomplished something, maybe not their complete end goals. And we see a time in society right now where you don't even see really the libertarian, the right wing, the left wing, anti-war people just going nuts because we're still in Afghanistan, still in Iraq. We have all this radical stuff going on. We're engaged. We don't see the they've been able to squash it. They've been able to keep it silent enough that it does not cause a problem, that people are still volunteering and the youth is still being manipulated. And again, that goes back to the youth is really being targeted hardcore, and I've covered this a lot. The youth is being propagandized and manipulated, and now they no longer the ones that join, that's what you're supposed to do. And they come from families that are usually in the military too. We're not questioning it like we should, that now we don't have the protests. We don't have the giant uprising protests like we did against Vietnam. We had a little bit of protesting and it just died off. Obama's in office, he'll stop it all. Yeah, I'm going to stop it all. I'm doing that right now. Oh, damn. Send some more troops in there. It's ridiculous that it's not causing an uproar. Definitely for the people, the anti-war that wanted him, you're not going to be taken seriously as an anti-war person when the right's in charge because you were willing to sit on your butt because Obama was in office. Your guy. And I don't understand, I guess without the numbers, because see the libertarians, when there was a Republican office, there were the Tea Party, so-called Tea Partyist libertarian Republicans. You had the libertarians and you had the left out protesting against the war in Iraq. But when the left is in charge, the left quits protesting. Libertarian and libertarian Tea Parties for Republicans, I guess you could call them. None of them are standing up. And when you do get the Republican libertarians, I hate even calling them libertarian, but no matter what, when you get them calling out, they're calling out for war against ISIS to protect Israel. And I think we're stuck in a catch-22. I think that it's gotten so out of control over there that it is a legitimate threat. But I don't think that us being over there is going to help out either, because I think, it's one of those things we're caught in a catch-22. I wouldn't know what to do, but I know that us being over there is more than likely been one of the contributors to the number of ISIS fighters growing. Their numbers are swelling, and a lot of people over there that were not terrorists before what I see is getting extremely upset with the continued occupation, because again, Obama didn't pull us out. But this whole nation state, we have to look to see what can we do. And I think there was a quote from Albert Camus, and I don't want to try to say the exact quote, but I'll paraphrase. Basically, to live in an unjust world, or to live free in an unjust world, you have to live so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. And I'm not saying some violence, go out there and cause chaos no, act of rebellion, meaning just live free, don't harm others, and choose to live your life as you please. You have a right to self-defense. Don't let anybody hold you back, even government. And we always harp on these businessmen. They are robbing us. Those really, are they not just playing the cards that are dealt? Because really, that there's a system set up that, yeah, you can make pretty good money. But I think where the conflict comes in is when most of these companies start doing things that harm people, whether it be in the military industrial complex or, GMOs or food whatever it may be. If people don't trust them and then see them profit off of them, and they don't see the way to get to that level without being a part of those companies, I think that's where the despair comes in. And again, that's because we don't have a capitalist market where each person can take it upon themselves to go out there and just, become big, because there's always so much regulation in the way that you have to go so far in debt, and then you can't turn out anything close to a profit that the big ones can, because, well, you have to make sure you don't pollute this or pollute that while they're polluting and just paying a fine, because they have so much revenue that they can do it, and it allows them to do it cheaper and faster, even by paying the fines. Well, if we can do this, we can save this much money, and that's paying the fine. And there's so much out there that's like that. So I think too, when it comes to youth, we have to be vigilant on letting them understand the concept of government, that it's not a thing, a machine that you can operate. Can't pull levers, push buttons. That's not how it works. It's a idea, a system that's set up that people go along with. When it's other individuals, you don't have control over them, even if you vote for them. And the nation state will continue to exist unless we make it a relevant idea. When society takes so much care of themselves that any interruption from a so-called government makes society go pause for a second and turn their head and go, excuse me? That silence that when someone does something real stupid in a restaurant or a bar, just acts inappropriately, where you get that all sudden silence and everybody looks over like, what are you doing? When governments attempt to abridge people's rights and you get that response from society, that's when the idea proves to be the failure that it really truly is, because the only reason it hasn't failed is because we allowed the idea to exist, the nation state to exist. So no matter what person we put in, it's set to exist, and government must have power to operate, and a corrupt government means absolute power, and they are attempting to grab absolute power, which as a nation state it basically does, because as we usually find out, they pass laws to justify what they're usually already doing. Okay, talking about anti-war, over here at antiwar.com on their blog, Google doubles down, demands review of all antiwar.com content. On Wednesday morning, Google AdSense suspended ad delivery to antiwar.com, demanding that we remove our 11-year-old pages that showed the abuse by U.S. soldiers of Iraqi detainees at Abu Ghraib. We publicized this and got a bit of coverage. Yesterday, Google announced, Google contacted us and told us that they had given in and would be restoring ad service to antiwar.com shortly. However, this morning they contacted us demanding that we remove this article. The article in question is the article titled, "Heads Up, the U.S. is Losing in Ukraine." And let me go back here. Antiwar.com has no intention of allowing Google to dictate our content. We are looking into alternative sources of advertising and will not likely be working with Google AdSense in the future. Don't let them get away with it. We need your help today, and you can do that in two ways. Make a donation to help us recover the lost revenue. We run this website on a shoestring, and the money we fully expected to bring in from Google Ads now puts a big hole in our budget. We simply can't afford to lose this income, but we're not taking down any of our content. No way, no how. And you can also contact Google. It gave what the email that Google AdSense sent to them, so you can check that out. antiwar.com/blog. Titled Google Doubles Down Demands Review of All Antiwar.com Content. And Google is really good at this type of stuff. We are I hate dealing with Google at all, YouTube, but they've done this to a lot of websites, a lot of liberty websites, or alternative news. They have allowed these AdSense on these websites for a long period of time with the same type of content. And they allow it to, you get your little 5 cent, 2 cent, whatever here and there, and if someone buys something, actually you get a little bit more. It's really not that much. It doesn't really add up to a lot unless you're getting a lot of traffic and clicks, and other than that, it doesn't add up to a lot, except for in the long term. But they'll allow these websites to get enough money built up, and this is money that these ads were shown, and this is what really pees me off about Google. And I've watched it happen to so many websites. They, show you how much that your revenue is bringing in. They allow it to build up. And then, these ads have been shown. I guess people have clicked on them, or, might have bought something through them or whatever. All I ever seen was like 2 cents, 3 cent type stuff. It never was anything. I ended up taking Google's completely off my website, but they've allowed these other websites, to get thousands of dollars. So these ads have been shown on their website. Evidently, people clicked on them or bought whatever. Allowed these people to get all this money built up, and they go to cash that out, and bam, all of a sudden their Google ads get shut down. And I've seen every type of excuse, saying that there's how do they put it? I don't even remember how they worded it. The one I seen, basically saying that suspicious traffic, content, which is what happened with antiwar.com. I think there was one that claimed nudity, even though it wasn't even nudity. It was like a bathing suit or something. I've seen almost everything. But they basically shut it down, and then well, because they shut it down. No, you don't get that money that's already accumulated. That money goes to Google. Because you no longer have an account. You are no longer active in AdSense. So where does all that money go? Well, you have to assume that it goes to Google. I'm sure they go, oh, we just, erase that and we don't charge these companies. Okay, yeah. You think these companies look at that 30 cents spent there, that 30 cents spent there? Do they really audit every single ad on YouTube? Just the way I see Google, my personal opinion, I see Google as a company that would just go ahead and charge the companies for all those and keep the money and not pay these websites like antiwar.com, which who knows how much antiwar.com might have had sitting in their AdSense account. I had a thing where AdSense, I had tried to add it, and they didn't approve me. Tried it again, they didn't approve me. Screw it. I don't want them anyways. Well, all of a sudden they approved me. Put their ads on my website, which you already have the code embedded, so I think I accumulated like a whole dollar something. And then they said suspicious activity. And I'm thinking, $1.25 in 6 months and there's suspicious traffic or something like that. Like, wow, did someone, spend a lot of time getting me $1? $1.20 something. I don't know. It was something stupid. Like, keep your dollar and screw you. Google ads will never be on my website if they begged me and offered me $1 million up front. Screw you. And I know a few other websites that I've either talked or known the people that ran it that have had lots of problem with Google ads. I think that they personally try to target certain websites. YouTube, Facebook, they all do this type of crap. I don't think that's really new to too many people. I have a short article I wanted to cover real quick. This came across Mises Wire, mises.org/blog. The political economy of Bob Dylan. So let us not talk falsely now. The hour is getting late. Bob Dylan, All Along the Watchtower, 1967. In his first interview in almost 3 years, a contemplative, septuagenarian Bob Dylan expresses, among other things, an appreciation for entrepreneurs as virtuous job creators and for voluntarism as the organizing principle of prosperous economy. At the same time, he rejects both communism and the governmental job creation programs beloved by Keynesians. Ever the American populist, Dylan voices mild displeasure at a wealthy billionaire giving his money away to foreign countries. He then goes on to say, the government's not going to create jobs. People have to create jobs. And these big billionaires are the ones who can do it. We don't see that happening now. Not saying they have to. I'm not talking about communism, but what do they do with their money? Do they use it in virtuous ways? These multi-billionaires can create industries right here in America, but no one can tell them what to do. God's got to lead them. The only thing lacking in Dylan's statement is the recognition that the failure by entrepreneurs to create more jobs is attributable to the fact that they are tangled up in bureaucratic red tape and hemmed in on all sides by legal and regulatory restrictions. And I think Bob Dylan being in the career that he's been in and everything, I think he has good intent and good ideas, but I think he doesn't understand the whole structure of it. I don't know if he I don't know. I like his music, but I think that's one thing. If you look at, well, entrepreneurs, but well, they're moving their money somewhere where they're not taxed as high, and they're not regulated so much that they can actually create something. When it becomes so unprofitable to operate, people go, well, there's companies still operating here in America and they're still, prospering. Most of those companies have other factories or other places throughout the world. Oh, believe me, these people are not putting their eggs in one basket. They are not playing the game that most of us play. Only buy U.S. goods. Only try to buy U.S. goods, but don't do it in a way that puts you in a worse spot. Definitely when it comes to things you need, and well, if I buy all U.S. goods, I can only afford half of what I really need. Well, then you better buy some foreign goods to offset that, and again, American goods could be a lot cheaper. But as we see in society, you can see it when the lemonade stand gets shut down because it hasn't been inspected by a health inspector. It doesn't. You don't have a proper permit. It's a little kids selling countryside lemonade or some other type of lemonade, fresh squeeze lemonade. Yeah, you don't have a permit. You can't do it. You see it when someone tries to start up a company, doesn't realize that there was also another permit on top of the other 2 or 3 that they had to go get. Didn't realize, and well, none of the other departments ever told you about that permit. You didn't realize that permit, but that department also one day shows up to your company and shuts you down until you pass this inspection, pay this fine, or whatever. And you go, well, we got to protect the consumers, and you want to make sure people are doing things the right way and protect the employees and all this. How many restaurants get to operate below standards for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden they get shut down? I've seen a lot of restaurants, buffets, and stuff operate for a long period of time, and the past 3 years they don't have any customers. Wonder why? Because they're not keeping their place clean, their food's crap, and there's something wrong going on there. If you eat there, you'll probably get sick. And then all of a sudden they get shut down. because it's become an eyesore. It's become something that is just kind of failing, and they decide that, well, okay, we don't care if they're paying their permit fee now. We'll shut it down. Becomes something that maybe a friend of one of the permitters, oh, I want to start a restaurant there. They would just shut down. Well, I can make that happen. That place is trashed and dirty. There's bugs running around there. Yeah, we can make it happen. This whole system is just so screwed. But, that's why those restaurants might be able to operate, but other people get shut down for something that, well, you don't have a little plastic yellow chain up blocking someone from falling off of this big gigantic ledge that's right here. Can't miss it. And they act like that plastic chain will do anything. It just, again, it amazes me. Okay, we're coming up to the end of the broadcast here. Urge people again, check out the UCY store again. UCY has partnered with Amazon, and you can find all the same great deals, and UCY also gets a kickback when you shop through that link. Go to ucy.tv, click the UCY store tab, and check it out. And UCY's put together a great collection of prepping, camping, and radiation gear for all the preppers out there. And great collection, one of the best I've seen. Check them out. And also go to antityrannynews.com/mypatriot and check out My Patriot Supply. This is a company that I trust when it comes to buying non-GMO seeds. Spring's coming, or spring's here, supposedly. And most of you are probably wanting to get your garden started or your crop started. Check them out. Again, antityrannynews.com/mypatriot. And you get the great deals there at mypatriot.com or My Patriot Supply. And, we get a little kickback. Helps us cover our operating costs. It definitely doesn't cover full operating costs, but I'm always happy to do this stuff out of my pocket to try to bring you the information that others aren't telling you and others aren't bringing to you. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV for all the great broadcasts coming next.
The Anti-Media Radio, your host Nick Burnby.